accountability. I hate accountability. I think all of us on some level hate accountability because it's all about, saying, I promised I was going to do this, and we feel like somebody's watching over my shoulder to make sure I did it. That's what we feel like with accountability. But accountability is the essential piece that keeps leaders leading. If you don't have accountability attached to leadership, then leaders end up taking off without their people. I mean, just imagine the leader running off on the trail. Imagine this, that you've got a trail guide who's out there, and what they do is they run off ahead of the people who they're supposed to be leading, and they just keep going, and they don't look back, and they don't check on whether or not they're doing the things the other people need them to do. That's a leader without accountability. They're no longer listening to the people who are following. They're no longer connected to what's happening in the group, in the team. And so accountability has to happen. Now, 4 basic things about accountability. First of all, it's personal, which means that accountability is about you. You have to be willing to open yourself up and say, it's okay to tell me that I did wrong. Secondly, it's vertical. Here's what that means. In every person, accountability creates a sense of authority. So if you say to me, Kevin, I want you to hold me accountable, guess what you just did? You created a vertical relation where, at least for that item at that moment, you said Kevin's the boss. Because I'm supposed to hold you accountable, right? So it creates a vertical relationship every time. Accountability creates a vertical relationship every one. But remember this, in true leadership, it's also bidirectional. So that means if I'm going to hold you accountable, I have to let you hold me accountable as well. That's the only way to make it truly functional, this thing called about accountability. And then the last thing about it is that it's values neutral. And what that means, it doesn't mean that it's not tied to core values, because it is. What it means is that if you hold somebody accountable because they're not doing something right, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. Being told that you're not measuring up doesn't make you bad or wrong or evil or anything else. It just means you didn't measure up, and it's an opportunity to do better. You see what that means? Okay, 4 principles. Principle number 1, you can't delegate responsibility. What do I mean? You can certainly say, hey, I'm the owner, you're my general manager, you're responsible for the day-to-day operations, right? That seems reasonable? But here's the truth. If I have a general manager who's responsible for day-to-day operations in my business, and that general manager is failing, who's at fault? Ultimately, I am at fault, the owner. Now, why is that? How can that be? That I'm at fault? Well, because the rule is you can't delegate responsibility, and ultimately, the general manager is there only because I put them there, right? And if they're failing, then I have a responsibility first to either give them the tools, resources, motivation, whatever it is they need to be successful, or remove them from the position. Isn't that right? So who's responsible for the failure, them or me? I am. First rule, you can't delegate responsibility. Second principle is accountability demands support. I can't put somebody out there and give them a job to do and then not back them up with the support they need to be successful. I can't just say, go get it done. You're on your own. Have fun. I've got to offer them training. I've got to offer them support. I've got to offer them information. I've got to offer them tools and resources and compensation and all of the things that are necessary for that accountability to make a difference. It's unfair for me to say, I sent you out there to get it done and you didn't get it done. I'm holding you accountable if I did not support them along the way. Right? Principle number 3, people respond to what you measure. What that means is I've got to let them know on the front end of the deal, before I send them out there to get the job done, exactly what measures I'm going to use to define success. I'll tell you, I was 6 years in the Army and 4 years in large corporations after that. And one of the things that frustrated me more than anything else was the annual performance review. How many of you do annual performance reviews with your employees? I think that's fine. I'm glad that you do. However, if your annual performance review looks anything like this, I want to challenge you to try and do it different. Because here's the thing. Most annual performance reviews do something like this in some form, right? The review time comes up, and you say to your people, hey, review time's coming up, and maybe you'll give them a copy of the review a few days in advance or a week in advance and ask them to fill it out for themselves and think for themselves, whatever, and there's a whole list of categories by which you've been evaluating them all year long. Or at least supposedly evaluating them all year long. And they look at them, and if they're like most employees that I know, and if they're like me as I was as an employee, they look at those things and they have no idea what that really means. They don't know what you're actually measuring with those things, so they make up whatever they can make up, and then they sit down in front of you and they tell you what they think about these things, and then you tell them what you think about these things, and in fact it's all a big mystery to them how the evaluation actually happened and how you decided on those things, and in the end of the game it's all really only about how much raise am I going to get.